So the topic is from despair to hope. And that's not been the easiest topic to get clear about. I don't know about you, but when I turn on the news, there's a bombardment of despair. And how do we approach it? How do we deal with it? Martin Luther King had a beautiful phrase where he said, "Where do we go from here? Community or chaos?" And I think we're at that moment, we're at that juncture of seeing how we can cope with the world as it is. So despair is the absence of hope. And it can be an overwhelming falling into the abyss. But the history of thought has also brought forward that this is not a new situation. Despair has existed. In Buddhism, the first noble truth is that life is suffering. It doesn't stay there, but it does recognize that. And a philosopher, Camus, talks about the absurd, that life can be seen as meaningless and going in directions that don't make sense. It's just absurd. And sometimes we can look through the eyes of the absurd and say, how can we think that war is leading to peace? I mean, it's mind-boggling sometimes. And then in the theological mysticism, St. John of the Cross talks about the dark night of the soul. And it seems sometimes that we may be in a collective dark night of the soul. And if that's so, there's good news. I will try to get to that soon. But perhaps like me, you're searching for truth. And that's even made even more complex given artificial intelligence and mass campaigns of misinformation. But that's another topic. It reminded me when I was in earlier part of my life, I had my first philosophy mentor, Dr. Michael Manns. And I remember going to him as I did for a weekly kind of session. And I remember one day going to him feeling confused, and my hands were holding up my head. And he said, as he often did, "That reminds me of a story." Because I said, how could it be that the world is so messed up? You know, how could war be leading to peace? How could people think that it's a good idea to throw people who are mentally ill onto the streets? I don't know what to do. So he said, here's the story. There was once a teacher who had a student, and the student wanted to be enlightened more than anything else in the world. And so he said, I'm stuck. I want to get to enlightenment. And the teacher said, it's right over here. It's within your grasp. The only thing you have to do is to slay 2 dragons. One is called confusion, and the other is called paradox. And there was something in the telling of that story that awakened something in me, because I became aware, as I believe now, that we are faced with a journey that is a mystery. And not everything will be able to be perceived through the rational mind. That we also have intuition, and that it gives us a larger picture of the way things are. And so that helped me to understand what the dark night of the soul was. But nothing prepared me for the actual experience of a dark night. And I was in a time, and as I was walking this morning, it was almost 40 years ago. And the dark night of the soul happened when I had just finished a PhD. I was teaching in a college that It was a competitive job market, so I was happy about that. And I was married, and I had a stepdaughter, and I had all the trimmings of what it would be to be successful and the captain of my ship. Except things started to fall apart. The marriage disintegrating, a stepdaughter who didn't know where she was going to go, double pneumonia, and gallbladder disease. And so I felt like I was in a cave, falling down the abyss and crying. And I couldn't stop, even though I had just indicated all of this stuff that had happened before that seemed like I was doing well. So the darkness is hard to stay present with. And yet, when I was watching the news recently, I came across a mother whose daughter was held hostage. And she said, "Please don't turn away. We need the world to see this. We need to have help." And then one of my other favorite authors, Valerie Kaur, we spoke about her a few months ago about revolutionary love, said, "If you cannot watch the images, don't. Turn away, but allow yourself to be nourished by the earth. And if somebody needs some help, sit with them, walk with them. Grief is not something to be overcome. It's to be with each other in it and walk side by side." And Mirabai Starr, who has been a wonderful author, she wrote a book called Wild Mercy and has been the translator of St. John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila. She said, "The dark night is about being fully present in the tender, wounded emptiness of our own souls. It is not about turning away from the pain, but learning to rest in it, rather than distracting ourselves from the simple darkness at our core. We sit with it, paying close attention and opening our hearts to all that is left, which is love." So we have the dark night, but then what's wonderful about the dark night is that it can lead to a luminous darkness. So as I was falling down the abyss, I fell asleep. And in a dream, an angel came to me and started to recite this prayer that I hadn't heard from childhood. And she said, "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Yea, though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me." I began to feel better. I could feel my heartbeat slowing down and my sense of panic happening to change. And what I saw is that at that time, oh my God, I'm not alone. There's something that is lighting my path, something that I didn't know could even be possible. And the dark night can open the door to that, to the spiritual awareness that we are not alone and that we can develop our spiritual practice in a way that far surpasses the life of the fragmented self that thinks that they're alone and separate from God. And so it occurred to me, if the dark night of the soul could be that for one person, and St. John of the Cross speaks about it beautifully. He experienced his own dark night of the soul when he was in a jail cell in 16th century Spanish Inquisition time. And he wrote love poems to the divine, the beloved, that he kept feeling inspired by. And there's a beautiful thing about contemplation, which he says, "Nothing is in the dark night but a secret, peaceful, loving infusion of God, which, if admitted, will set the soul on fire with the spirit of love. So that's possible, and it happens when you surrender. I don't know how it happens, it's mysterious. Some people say it's grace. But it seemed to me, just like some of the songs and the readings today, that it can flip us into a different consciousness, that we are vehicles of the beloved as light, as love, as compassion. And St. John of the Cross talks about it when we're with the beloved, when we have this mystical union with God, that it's as if we put on different robes to reflect the qualities of God. There's a blue robe, there's a radiant white robe that is the robe of faith. There is a beautiful blue robe that signifies compassion, a green robe that talks about charity. And of course, all of this is ignited by love. So it occurred to me, how can we be the vehicles of God and express the beloved? And an activist in the peace movement said, don't wait for hope to come and inspire you. Get up and do something, and do something that's good, and you will be filled with hope, and you will see that the world around you becomes filled with hope. Ernest Holmes said, if you are sad or depressed or feeling down, find something that you can commit yourself to, that you can be of service, and you will find an inflow of spirit that you never thought was possible. So we're asked to be a vehicle, be a conduit of God. Albert Schweitzer said, I don't really know you, but those of you who will be happy in this lifetime will have found a way to serve. So we have so many people talking about this. And in terms of the Dark Night, I went to an exhibit, was the Auschwitz exhibit that's still at Simi Valley in the Ronald Reagan Library. And how could that be? After 4 hours of this exhibit, I came away feeling inspired. It was because of the testimonies of the people who were having this experience of survival. And one woman said, love. Don't waste your precious life by hating people for whatever reason. And then one more testimony. Charlotte Delba, 1975. You who are passing by, I beg you, do something. Learn a dance step, something to justify your existence, something that gives you the right to be dressed in your skin and your body hair. Learn to walk and to laugh, because it would be too senseless, after all, for so many to have died while you live doing nothing with your life. There's a call to service. There's a call to be a vehicle of love, to be a vehicle of God. So we have different, like the yin and the yang symbol. There was the black and the white that we saw, the yin and the yang. I feel that the call is to not only see the darkness when we turn on the TV, but to also simultaneously hold it while we experience this incredible light of God, this is incredible love of God. And we can see that despair can lead to hope and illumination. And the Buddha, who started with the first noble truth, then winds up with a path that has guided, millions of people to awakening to the truth of who they are and to an enlightened way of being through the development, like we have in the science of mind, of right thinking and right attitude, right awareness. Camus started with the determination that life is absurd, so why even bother to live? But he winds up with, no, the real answer is to be in revolt against absurdity by being happy. He said, in the midst of the darkest, deepest winter, I found within me an invincible summer. So we just keep seeing the same threads that are going fully from different traditions and different ages. And it made me realize that the slaying of the dragons that Dr. Manns told me about didn't involve combat, didn't involve engagement with one or the other. It was to lift the vibration of love that would change and ascend from that battle. And it's a mystery that we're on in this pathway. So there's a tradition in Japan of when a vessel or a vase is broken, that there's a repair. It's called kintsugi, and it means golden repair. So the idea is when something is broken and mended with gold, it is even more beautiful because it shows that it's strong to survive the situations that brought it to be broken, and that it's resilient. And there's a philosophy that comes from that we all have broken parts. The world has broken parts. But what if we became the menders of gold through our spiritual practice, through love, through kindness, through compassion, and that becomes the gold that mends the brokenness. And I've been meditating on this image. Maybe we can see the image. That's the union with divine love. And here's the kintsugi world, gold earth. What if we can see the world? And I've been meditating on this all week and feeling the upliftment. Not that I'm denying that the world has a lot of suffering and has a lot of despair, but it also has efforts of healing, efforts of prayers, wanting things to be good for the people who are suffering. This makes a difference. And if I needed any confirmation, I'm standing at a copy shop making a copy of this so that I can meditate on it more fully. And the woman behind me, who I didn't know, says, "Can I have a copy of that?" And I told her what it was, and she happens to be a interfaith coordinator, bringing together groups to pray and to dialogue. And these were some of the golden threads. And so she got 10 copies to give out to her people. And I asked Gay, an angel in our community, to help me bring this to you. And so when you leave, we'll have a little Kintsugi gold earth for you to take in your meditation. There's a line that says, in this tradition of Kintsugi, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. So I feel that as a spiritual community, we're right here in that opportunity to use our spiritual practice, to use our awareness and lift the vibration that can bring us to peace, that can bring us to love and communication with each other. And I know that I'm not the only one who can think of this. And it may not be the answer to every problem, but I think it could lead to a good direction. And I think that it is doing something to hold the vision. And I'm so glad that you'll join me, because where do we go from here? Chaos or community? I choose community. I choose you. Love and blessings.